Hello, I'm with Mr. John Morgan, who is one of our lead instructors at John M. Campbell & Company. That name should be familiar to a lot of you, and I want to thank you, John, for taking time out to visit with us.
Thank you, Chris.
Just wanted to ask you, how long have you been training engineers in this business?
Quite a number of years. Engineers really back into the middle 80s. And before that, I started training with operators in the late 60s in the oil refinery that I worked back then, teaching basic mechanics and basic mathematics to operators. So it does go back a while.
The thing that I wanted to discuss with you was the G4LNG course, and wanted to ask you, who's the intended audience for this type of course?
Chris, thanks for asking that. The broad audience will be engineering and technical people involved in the liquefied natural gas in the LNG industry around the world. But that's a very broad group of people involved in the technical operation of the facilities, in the engineering and design of them, all the way through to risk management and insurance, and indeed the marketing side of the business. But the main focus will be in the engineering people, both in the design of the units and supporting the operations of those kind of plants. And I would say that constitutes something like 70% of the audience for this program. And it's very worldwide. It's a very international program reflecting the diversity and the geographical diversity of this industry.
And broadly speaking, what's the course content cover?
It's a pretty intensive course. It's a 10-day program, and probably 90% of this course, maybe a little more, maybe even 80%, draws on the base standard Campbell gas course, the Volume 1 and Volume 2, which is 1,000 pages of textbook that we go through on a program like this. So the fundamentals draw on that course, but they're set against a context of LNG industry examples and problems. So the discussions, the exercises, the problems, the symposiums that we run during the course are set against not the North Sea, not the Gulf of Mexico, not necessarily oil and gas operations in the Middle East, but to the contrary, they're set against actual technical problems that we find in the LNG industry, in the LNG plants themselves. Now that's the base 70 or 80%. What about the other 20%? Mm-hmm. Now LNG is characterized by some of the world's largest refrigeration equipment. Refrigeration equipment that's built really as large as man knows how to build it at this stage. So there's a lot of emphasis on gas turbine drivers, variable speed electric drivers, and large, really enormous refrigeration systems, first of all. That's an important component. Another very important component is the gas purification requirements for liquefied natural gas are particularly stringent. Whereas the CO2 content for gas going into a pipeline could be perhaps 2 or 3%. For an LNG plant, it has to be less than 100 parts per million. So we're talking about special requirements of gas purity, and those two aspects alone, the gas purification and the refrigeration systems, accounts for, if you will, that final 20% that's a little bit different from a traditional Campbell gas course.
Putting yourself in the young engineer's shoes as they consider the G4LNG, why is that, from a career development standpoint, important for them to consider taking?
There's a number of reasons for that. Number one is a strong theoretical and fundamental grounding in gas technology, gas engineering, as applied to LNG, number one. And really those fundamentals are very important, and they take perhaps the first 3 days of the program. A review of fundamentals in gas engineering and a series of exercises and problems and group exercises to consolidate that, to build their confidence that they really do have that foundation first. And then based on that, we move from the fundamentals into some very practical discussions on heat exchange, two-phase flow, which is important in these facilities, compression, heat exchanges. The various pieces of equipment make these plants tick, so they can actually understand the technical aspects of these and use this information to go out and do performance tests on the plant, troubleshoot their facilities in the case of an operating facility, and in the case of a design engineer, to do their job better in terms of the actual engineering design of these kind of facilities.
Very good. Mr. Morgan, can you tell me what are some of the important characteristics of this course in terms of delivery?
Chris, I've already mentioned the base course materials and those, quote, 1,000 pages of materials that we go through. But another important aspect to the exercises and problems, seminars and syndicates we do during the course itself. The exercises and problems that we work are based on real-life LNG exercises. Most of these have come out of visits that we make into the LNG plants themselves. So they're very practical problems that the class can relate to, and they are directly applicable either in the design or in the operations and troubleshooting of these kind of facilities.
What are some of the practical aspects of this course?
Oh, Chris, that's key. That's very key. The bottom line of that is, how does this information apply to my job? That's the bottom line of that. And a number of ways that we bring the practical elements in. One thing that is important to recognize here is the power of these example problems that we work throughout the course. Many of these are actually brought to the course by the participants in a given course or have arisen in earlier presentations of the course. Very practical problems coming from a design house or from an LNG plant itself. So the problems we use, the exercises we use, relate directly to the industry. They relate directly to the industry, number one. Another important thing for me to say is it's not unusual on in-house courses for us to actually have a field trip, a day in the LNG plant, working exercises where we actually look at the equipment, look at the operating conditions, and complete a 6-page exercise to focus the attention of the groups when we're in the plants themselves. On any given course, that's a very important element. And in terms of enriching our course with practical information from probably the 10 or 15 LNG plants that we visited around the world, that just serves to raise the validity of the information that we're presenting.
Great. And is this course only available on an in-house basis?
Most often this course is taught on an in-house basis. Most of the ones that we've taught, going back into the late 80s, early 90s on the Northwest Shelf, most of these are taught in-house. And that's taken us to Indonesia, it's taken to the Middle East, it's taken us to Nigeria, it's taken us to peak shaving plants in the United Kingdom, it's taken us to in a wide variety of LNG facilities, and certainly most of our programs have been in-house. But this course is also available as a public open enrollment course.
Great. I also know that you've done some speaking about LNG. Could you speak to that for just briefly?
Oh, Chris, I was hoping to keep that quiet, but that's quite correct. On 2 separate occasions, I've been honored to be a distinguished lecturer for the Society of Petroleum Engineers just in recent years. The subject was on liquefied natural gas, and I have to say that was one of the high points in my career to be honored to deliver those series of lectures. Yes, thanks for asking that.
Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Morgan, for taking time out to talk to us about the G4LNG course. And if you would like more information on this course, I want to invite you to visit us at www.jmcampbell, that's JMCAMPBELL.com. Thank you.